You're live, Chair.
Perfect. Okay. Welcome to tonight's licensing subcommittee meeting. My name is Councillor Patrick Walsh, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. If I lose connection, Councillor Florian Chivot-Verdier will take over from me. I'd like to remind all participants of a few housekeeping points. First, please keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking. Please keep your camera turned on when you speak at the hearing. Please note that the chat function has been disabled. If parties wish to add any additional information other than at their allocated time to speak, they must use the raise hand function so that they are not missed. I also ask that members keep their questions and comments brief and to the point. I shall now move on to the first item, which is agenda item 1, apologies for absence. And there is no apologies for absence. Item 2, declaration of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest they wish to raise?
No, Chair.
Okay. Hearing none. In that case, we shall move along to item 3, which is the Textile Tribute 30 Goldhawk Road, London, W12 8DH. But before we do so, I'd like to acknowledge that we are joined this evening as an observer by Hammersmith and Fulham councillor Patricia Quigley. So good evening to you, councillor. Okay. Right, moving on to item 3. I'd like to ask everybody participating to introduce themselves as I call upon you. We should have with us Mr. Surindra Panchal, the applicant's agent. Are you present?
He needs to unmute, Chair.
Pardon?
Sorry, sir, I'm present.
Okay, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Do we have Arvind Singha, the applicant?
Yes, I'm present.
And we should have Lorna McKenna, the licensing officer.
Present, Chair.
And we should have Gertha, the council's legal officer.
Present, Chair. Good evening.
Good evening. And in objection, this evening, do we have Irene Ravila?
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, perfect. Good evening to you all. Now, just to outline the procedure, before we consider the application today, please may I quickly explain the procedure. Firstly, we will hear from the licensing officer who will introduce the item. We will then hear from the objector and then finally from the applicant. Usually each party will address the committee for a maximum of 5 minutes. Following the presentation by all parties, the committee may ask questions to any party or other person present at the hearing. Except for members of the committee, no party has the right to ask questions of any other party at any time during the hearing. Following the presentation and questions, each party will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to sum up their case or representation. The committee will then retire for deliberations. Upon its return, I will announce the committee's decision. So could I please ask Lorna McKenna to introduce the application?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the 3rd of September 2024, the Licensing Authority received a valid application for a new premises licence in respect of the premises known as Textile Tribute, 30 Goldhawk Road, London, W12 8DH, which was submitted on behalf of Manpreet Kapoor from Personal Licence Courses UK on behalf of Arvind Singh Khurana, the applicant. The applicant has applied for a new premises licence for the sale of alcohol off the premises only, as I outlined as follows. So the sale of alcohol off the premises only, Monday to Sundays between the hours of 10 a.m. till 11 p.m, with the proposed opening hours of the premises Monday to Sundays between 8 a.m. till 11 p.m. In the application, the applicant has proposed a number of steps to promote the 4 licensing objectives within the operating schedule if the application is granted this evening. During the consultations period, the licensing section received 4 representations which objected to the licence application being granted on behalf of local residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lorna. So we will now move along to the objections, and Irene, you will have 5 minutes to speak. So over to you.
Yes. Hello. I didn't realize I was going to be the only one objecting today, but no, I won't need 5 minutes. I think that my objection lays on a few pillars. So firstly, oversaturation of licenses or places that already fulfill that role. So in the area, we have 2 of licenses. We have the Tesco, we have the Sainsbury's. I do wonder, what is this additional of license going to add to the community? Is it really necessary? The second point is the high crime levels. I think that we probably all agree that this area of Goldhawk Road is already experiencing quite a high level of crime, drugs, alcohol, etc. Like every evening when I go out to take out my dog at around 10 p.m, I see lots of people already drinking outside a couple of the fabric shops on Goldhawk Road. So I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of these other additional of license and what value they think that they're going to add to the community, and what else they're going to, to give us. And I think that also is the negative community impact. I think that we are all trying to create a safer and more family-friendly neighborhood. And I think that this type of initiative, it sort of undermines what everyone else is doing as a community. So, that's those are the main reasons why I think that another off license is not really needed, and why I objected to it in the first place.
Perfect. Irene, you do have a little over 3.5 minutes if you wish to use it.
No, I think I'm okay. Thank you.
Fabulous. Okay, well, thank you very much. In that case, we will move along to the applicant. Can I ask Mr. Surinder Pachal, who I believe is acting as the agent's applicant, or agent for the applicant, should I say, to speak? And equally so, you have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Chairman, I'm going to be trying to be as brief as possible, since there are about 3 to 4 applications, objectors. I'd prefer if I could overroll a little bit on the 5 minute if it runs out, because I'm going to try and be precise on running of the premises. The premises is not on a primitive impact zone, just to make you understand. There were no objections from the police regarding the crime and disorder in the area. The police do understand, and police are the main source for the committee and the licensing, to make sure if there are any problems with the application and the area. The other thing is, no other responsible authorities have objected to this application. Looking at the objectors' views, I'd like to bring in section guidance 14.19, which says there can be confusion about the difference between the need for premises and the cumulative impact of the premises on the licensing objective. For example, on crime and disorder, need concerns the commercial demand for another pub or restaurant or hotel, and is a matter for the planning authority and for the market. This is not a matter for the licensing authority. At the moment, you heard from the objector that there is no need for another. Need is not a concern for this committee to look at. That is our our reply. As far as the other objectors are concerned, we've looked at all the objections, and at the present moment, it is an assumption that our client is going to sell underage or going to do drug dealings or whatever, but he is not, and that is what he is there for. There is trading standards. There are police who will be keeping an eye on it and to make sure he doesn't do it, and he doesn't want to do it, and that's not what he's doing. He has an experience of running off licensing since 2020. He has had presently running a Londis in High Wycombe, where he was a a DPS, but he's resigned there as a DPS since he's going to be taking over these premises. So his full-time view would be running the premises at this premises here. He will be having a training manual at the premises. The training manual consists of documents such as trying to work out how when anybody is employed, a thorough training of 1 hour to 2 hours is given to the person under all the licensing objectives at the premises. There will be a premises license attached at the training manual. There will be a right to work documents. So all the people's right to work documents will be checked and put into the training manual for responsible authorities to have a look. He will also be under the section 57, which is required by law to say who is going to be holding the premises license. Apart from that, there will be an authorization who has the authority to sell alcohol on the premises. All the authorizations will be logged into this training manual. All the staff will be fully trained every 3 months, even if they have a personal license. They'll be trained by the DPS every 3 months, and those trainings will be logged into, so responsible authorities will be able to have a look at the training manual. I hope you can look at it, and I hope I get my video is good enough for you to have a look. And there will be an exam in it. There will be a pocket guidebook given to the all the staff, so they understand what the 4 licensing objectives are. Apart from that, Chairman, there will be, by legal right, they will have a CCTV working 37 days on the premises. They will be able to give the CCTV to the responsible authorities as and when required. If the CCTV is not working, they will not sell alcohol, and they will have an incident book which will record all the incidents happening at the premises. I'm holding the incident book there. They will also be having a CCTV poster put up at the premises to say to people that you are on the CCTV, which is by legal requirement. Apart from that, they will also, looking at the public nuisance, they will have a poster saying to everybody, please live quietly and consider our neighbors. So there will be no matters looking into that. And they will also be following the Challenge 25 policy, which is under by law. They will be having a Challenge 25 poster put up at all the places where their alcohol is displayed. And once they will be asking the IDs to anybody who looks the age of 25 to 18, and they will be noted down in the refusal book at the premises. So the refusal book will also be present at the premises for responsible authorities to have a look. Now, looking into all this, you can see that how robustly the premises license is going to be promoted if the client does understand about it. So, Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions. I've gone through and I understand the client understands the 4 licensing objectives. We're happy to take any questions from the committee.
You've now reached your 5 minutes, so if you could please sum up.
Thank you very much, Chair. We've summed it up, and we feel that we are going to be promoting the 4 licensing objectives robustly, so we feel the license be granted today.
Thank you very much. In that case, we are now going to move on to committee questions. Can I ask committee members to ask questions of any party about the application and issues that have been raised at the hearing in relation to the 4 licensing objectives? And as a reminder, the objectives are 1, the prevention of crime and disorder, 2, public safety, 3, the prevention of public nuisance, and 4, the protection of children from harm. So do any members of the committee have any questions they wish to ask? Let me just scroll across. I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to those who have spoken. I only have 1 or 2 just very brief questions, and forgive me if the answers are actually already in the paperwork. I may have missed them. This is a question to the applicant or to Mr. Panchal. Good evening. I see that the opening hours are from 8 o'clock in the morning, and the proposed sale of alcohol would be from 10 o'clock in the morning. Can you just explain to us what the cabinets for the wine and for the alcohol for beer are on the left-hand side. Will they be covered up or locked between the hours of 8 and 10, or will it just be a refusal to serve?
Chairman, sorry, Councillor, we will be covering up the alcohol to say, and there will be a poster put up at the alcohol to say no alcohol will be sold till 10 o'clock. So if anybody tries to approach it, he will read the notice there clearly stating that there will be no, the alcohol will be locked up, this fridge will be locked up. So they will not be able to pick up the alcohol. And just to remind you, all the spirits are going to be behind the counter, so there will be no approach for the spirits.
Yes, no, I saw that. Thank you. That was why I was just really just checking on the wine and the beer. Can I just also ask what is the intention for the staffing level? Will it be one person or two people generally during the day?
Two people. There will be two.
One will be my manager and one will be staff.
Okay, fine. Thank you. I think for now that's all the questions that I have, Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Stanton. Councillor Chivot-Verdier.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all parties present tonight, and welcome to Councillor Quigley. I wanted to ask about the previous operation. So the applicant and their agent have mentioned that the applicant has a history of running such premises elsewhere in London or the country. So I wondered if you could tell us more about this. What types of venues, what type of hours? Are they also licensed premises, and do they sell alcohol? Thank you.
They run a franchise of Laundries in High Wycombe. It's in High Wycombe. That is where he was working and having the shop. He's still a partner with that business. He used to be the DPS, and he's now resigned as a DPS from there because he's taking over these premises once it's granted, the license is granted. So he does have an experience from 2022 to right to 2025. He's presently also working there. This premises is going to take time before it opens. If the license is granted tonight, he will then be furnishing the shop and making it proper before it opens.
Thanks. You've said about 3 years of experience running that other
license, yeah.
Okay.
He has no. Yeah, I can also stress that he hasn't breached any of the conditions of the Licensing Act running that premises.
Okay, so no enforcement or failing a training standards check?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for now.
Thank you, Councillor Chivot-Verdier. I'm going to bring in our Council's legal officer, Goethe, if you wish to speak.
I've just got something to clarify following up from Councillor Stanton questions in relation to the alcohol being covered up. Because I noticed, Mr. Panchal, you offered a condition about the football match days, and I want to clarify when the councillors discuss later. You said that the alcohol will be covered up during the time that you are not selling from 8 till 10. Will it be the alcohol just covered up, or will it be under locked shutters?
Yeah, as I mentioned, that the locker of the freezer.
Normally the freezer, beers, the fridges will be covered up, and of course spirits will be behind the counters.
So the freezers will be locked up, and the spirits will be behind the counter anyway.
Sorry, I'm writing this down. So freezers will be covered up.
Alcohol freezers will be covered up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Goethe. I just had a question myself to the applicant. Obviously, your agent has touched on the extensive amount of training that you've done already. Could you just expand on the sort of training that you've already undertaken yourself?
Sorry. He has, when I say training, he has got a APLH level 2, which is the obtaining of the personal license, which he has done it in the year 2020, obtained his personal license under the training. And so he understands the 4 licensing objectives.
Excellent. And then in terms of, you mentioned about a refresher for staff every 3 months. Are you intending to provide that yourself, or are you intending to bring in an external party to provide that training?
We are also a training firm ourselves. We will be training, giving them BII level 1 trainings once the staff have undergone 6 months of work and decided to stay permanent, because there is a huge problem with the off licenses when staffs move around. So initially, when the staff come into play, we normally ask the DPS to do the trainings of the 4 licensing objectives and make the staff understand what the 4 licensing objectives are. There is a small booklet that is going to be given to the staff, a pen booklet, which covers up the whole training. And then after that, 3 months again, the DPS will sit down and train the staff again and go through the 4 licensing objectives with the staff. And if the staff is carried on in 6 months, they will be sending it to us for BIIAB level 1 course.
Certainly. And you mentioned once staff become permanent, you're looking to provide further training. Is that like a probation period before you provide it, or can you just clarify that a bit?
It is like a probation period for 6 months. The staff will be employed from the local area, so it becomes easier for staff to come in and go. So they will be creating employment in the local area for 2 staffs at least. 2 to 3 staffs, isn't it?
We will see how it
matters. Yeah.
Once we open, we will see how the shops we needed stuff.
Okay, excellent. Do any other members of the committee have any questions? Gotha.
Sorry, I've got a follow-up question in relation to training. Mr. Panchal, you said that the staff will be trained on the licensing objectives, but the premises is selling alcohol. So it's important for the staff also to be trained on the sale of alcohol issues, how to deal with people who are already drunk. So can you just confirm whether this training is going to be provided, or how often the staff are going to be trained? And whether a condition can be added if the license will be granted tonight?
Just a quick stress. When we say the training will be carried out on licensing objectives, the licensing objectives, as a trainer myself, covers up everything, the drunk, and covers up the sale of alcohol in general. The Licensing Act with the 4 licensing objectives covers up the entire licensing act of selling alcohol to not to drunks, underage, alcohol signs, as well as the trainings in how to deal with incidents that are going to happen, which covers up into the 4 licensing objectives.
Okay.
When we come under the prevention or protection of children from harm, which covers up the alcohol sales to underage. The prevention of public nuisance will cover up the sales to proxy sales or cover up.
But as you are aware, Mr. Panchal, the council has got standard conditions in relation to training, specifying all these areas. So I noticed that you have offered a training condition, but it's not as specific as the council standard one. So if the councillors will grant the license tonight, would you be happy for it to be amended to reflect all the things that you mentioned that the staff is going to be trained upon?
Yes, we'll definitely be, and that will be a positive way forward for the client.
Thank
you. Definitely.
Thank you, Gotha. Do members of the committee have any other questions they wish to raise? Okay, in that case, we shall move to summing up. And I'm going to ask each party to sum up in order. Firstly, starting with the licensing officer, Lorna. Do you wish to sum up?
No, nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you, Lorna. The objector, Irene, you've up to 3 minutes if you wish to speak.
Yeah, no, I'll just keep it brief. I just think that, again, we don't really need another off license. You know, I think that me as a resident, I just want what's best for my neighborhood, and I don't feel like someone who, you know, another off license that starts selling alcohol at 10 a.m. is the way forward. You know, I think you know, that's all I can say. You know, I appreciate that the person who's requesting the license, you know, has to make a living, but maybe not on Goldtop Road.
Thank you, Irene.
Thank you.
And finally, can I ask Mr. Panchal if you wish to sum up? And again, you have up to 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I'm glad to say that the client understands the 4 licensing objectives. We're happy to have the training as Gatha's requested for the staff. We're happy to even put up the condition that she is requesting regarding the training. We're happy to do that. Sir, I've also mentioned in my earlier presentation that 4 licensing objectives are going to be robustly promoted, which is the major part of the Licensing Act 2003. So, Chair, I do not have any further things than what I presented, and I request the committee today to grant this license. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Panchal. Okay, we will now move to the deliberations, which will take place as a separate meeting to this. You're welcome to remain in the meeting to hear the committee's decision. However, this may take some time. If you don't want to wait, a summary of the decision will be published on the Council's website tomorrow morning. Can I ask members of the committee to turn off their video, mute their microphones, and to join me in the private Teams meeting to begin the deliberations? Thank you all. Okay. Charles, is everybody present?
We're just in the process of rejoining, Chair. Just a few more moments.
Okay.
Gertie, you on the call?
Have we got Gotha? Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, thank you everybody for waiting. I shall now read the decision. The committee has considered an application for a new premises license for the sale of alcohol off the premises only under the Licensing Act of 2003. In summary, the committee has decided, after taking into account all of the individual circumstances of this case and the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, to grant the application as follows. The sale of alcohol off the premises Monday to Sunday, 10 to 11 p.m. The opening hours of the premises shall be as follows: Monday to Sunday, 8 to 11 p.m. The license is subject to any mandatory conditions. The license is subject to the conditions volunteered by the applicant in the operating schedule and amended by the committee. This license becomes operational with immediate effect. If problems are experienced, then an application for review of the premises license can be made. A copy of this committee full decision, including reasons and the full text of the conditions added by the license, added to the license, will be sent to the parties forthwith. If the applicant or any person who has made a relevant representation is unhappy with the decision, they are entitled to appeal to the Magistrates' Court within 21 days from the date of notification of the final decision. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Chair, that concludes the first item. More attendees were anticipated, and therefore the second item is scheduled for 8 o'clock, but it's been listed as 8 o'clock, so we can't legally start until 8 o'clock. So what I'd suggest is everyone mute their microphone and turn their camera off. I'll put an adjournment tile up, and if everyone can rejoin the meeting at 5 to 8, please.
Can
Sounds
I
good.
the meeting? Is that okay?
Yes, Mr. Panchal, we've concluded with this application. We're moving on to the next application, but thank you for your participation this evening.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
And I'm guessing for Councillor Quigley's precision, that's the end of the item that I think Charles, she needs to be in. So
Do I need to be here, Charles, or
No,
just
you're
advise?
able to leave the now as an observer. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Lovely to see you all.
hi, Patricia.
Thank you for joining us, Councillor Quigley.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Let's give it another 2 minutes for everybody to rejoin.
Everyone is on the call now, Chair, apart from the objector, but licensing are contacting him again at the moment.
Excellent. Can I check, Councillor Stanton, are you with us? Okay. Okay, welcome back, Councillor. All right, so let's give it another minute and then we will kick off. Okay, shall we begin then? All right. Welcome to tonight's licensing subcommittee meeting. My name is Councillor Patrick Walsh, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. If I lose connection, Councillor Florian Chivot-Verdier will take over from me. I'd like to remind all participants of a few housekeeping points. Firstly, please keep your microphones muted unless you are speaking. Please keep your camera turned on when you speak at the hearing. Please note that the chat function has been disabled. If parties wish to add any further additional information other than that during their allocated time to speak, they must use the raise hand function so that they are not missed. I also ask that members keep their questions and comments brief and to the point. I now move to agenda item 1. Apologies for absence, and no apologies for absence have been received. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest?
No, Chair.
Okay, hearing no declarations. In that case, we move swiftly along to item 3, which is Bohar, London, 562 Kings Road, London. I'd like to ask everybody participating to introduce themselves as I call on you. So we should have with us Marcus Lavelle, the solicitor.
That's me, sir.
Good evening. We should have Mr. Chase Hunter, the owner-operator.
Yeah, that's me.
And then we should have Lorna McKenna, the licensing officer.
Yes, present, Chair.
We should have Adrian Overton or Christina Perez Trillo, the licensing officer, also joining.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
Good evening, Adrian.
Good evening.
And we should also have Gertha, the council's legal officer, as well.
Present, Chair. Good evening.
Good evening. Now, in objections, can I check, do we have Nicholas Reed Clark?
He hasn't joined the meeting, Chair.
Okay. Can I clarify with you, Charles? Is there a point to which Mr. Clark or Mr. Reed Clark can join, or do we need to exclude him from the meeting from this point onwards?
I'd probably like to take Gert's advice on that. I think after we've heard the licensing presentation, if he's not present in the next 5 minutes or so, I don't think he's able to participate, and it'll be a question of officers referring to his written objections in the agenda packs. But again, Gerta may wish to clarify that.
Chair, that will be in your discretion, Chair, but I don't think we can limit to 5 minutes. For example, if we have the applicant to make his initial introduction and the objector comes later, we can hear him, and then it will be useful if we can have questions later. If the objector does not attend, we can rely on his written representation. But if we are, let's say, halfway through the hearing, I don't think there is any point of having the objector in the hearing. But obviously that is up to your discretion. We can see as and when he will attend tonight.
Okay.
But you can rely, all of you can rely on his written representation.
Perfect. And then we should also have present Councillor Jose Alfonso, Ward Councillor, and also Councillor Adrian Pascu Tolbaro, who is additionally a Ward Councillor who've made representations.
I am present, Chair, and Councillor Pascu Tolbur has given me his time. Thank you.
Fabulous. Good evening to you, Councillor. In that case, we shall move along to the procedure, which to explain, we will first hear from the licensing officer who will introduce the application. We will then hear from the objectors, and finally, we will hear from the applicant. Usually each party will address the committee for a maximum of 5 minutes. Following the presentation by all parties, the committee may ask questions to any party or other person present at the hearing. Except for committee members, no party has the right to ask questions of any other party at any time during the hearing. Following the presentation and questioning, each party will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to sum up their case or representation. The committee will then retire for deliberations, and upon its return, I will announce the committee's decision. So could I please ask the licensing officer, Lorna McKenna, to introduce the license or the application?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So on the 1st of August 2024, the Licensing Authority received a valid application for a variation to the premises licence in respect of the premises known as Boha London, 562 Kings Road, London, SW62DZ, which was submitted by Keystone Law Limited on behalf of Phoenix Hospitality Group Limited, the applicant. The premises does currently benefit from a premises licence which permits the following licensable activities: the performance of dance indoors only, the performance of live music indoors only, the playing of recorded music indoors only, the entertainment similar to music or dance indoors only, the provision of late night refreshment indoors only, and the sale of alcohol both on and off the premises. For full details and a copy of the current premises licensing plan, this can be seen on pages 54 to 71 of the main agenda this evening. The applicant has applied for a variation to add an additional condition to the premises licence as follows. Conditions on this premises licence that relate to the ID scanner, conditions 30, 31 and 32, shall only take effect when the premises licence holder is given 10 days written, including email notice by the Metropolitan Police licensing officer. The premises will continually risk assess the use of the ID scanner. There are no increases in hours or licensable activities being sought in the variation this evening. During the consultation period, the licensing section received 3 representations objecting to the variation application. 2 representations were received on behalf of the Parsons Green and Sandford ward councillors, and 1 representation was received on behalf of a local resident, all who objected to the grant of the variation application. There has been previous enforcement history at the premises back in 2022 and no enforcement history since. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lorna. We will now move to the objectors, and I'm not seeing the Mr. Rees-Clark present, but I am going to reserve his 5 minutes for now, assuming that he may join at a later point. And I am instead going to move along to Councillor Alfonso. Now, Councillor Alfonso, you are obviously speaking in your own capacity, but also in representation of Councillor Pascu Tolbaro. So I will be allowing you 10 minutes to speak. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I can assure the committee I will not require the full 10 minutes, as I will take my submissions as read. So we've all been here before with this premises. Now, they have clearly made some progress. However, we cannot forget that a few months into my first term, back in 2022, we were here because two 16-year-olds had, well, we've all read the papers. My main concern is condition 30, that after 9 p.m, the use of the scanner when a temporary event is held not be considered. Fundamentally, I think that is ridiculous. The 10-day notice period, is that long enough for turnaround? We don't know. But the reality is, in what sort of premises would not want the security of an ID scanner following the events that have partaken in the past? Now, I fully get condition 31, 32 not being wanted in the event of a private party, fully get that. But the security that an ID scanner offers a premises and the public and us as a licensing authority is paramount. And the idea that after 9 p.m, the peak time that people visit these venues, and maybe priorly intoxicated, they may have been drinking elsewhere, that at that time the ID scanner be turned off during one of these temporary events, it just doesn't sit well with me. I've received many representations from residents asking Adrian and I to put in an objection to this. That's why we're here. And committee, I do implore you, if you are to accept this, please modify section 30. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alfonso. Now, I've been made aware that Mr. Reid Clark has now joined us this evening. Mr. Reid Clark, could you please turn on your camera and introduce yourself?
Oh, hello. I'm one of the residents of the Moor Park Conservation Area. I've lived here for 40 years.
Just a moment, Mr. Reid Clark. We've been hearing representations from Councillor Alfonso. Obviously, you're here to make a representation in objection to this evening, so you will have 5 minutes to make your representation, and you can now begin.
Great, thanks very much. I mean, obviously, the new restaurant is an asset to the area, and we welcome it. And it does, I think, add cultural vibrancy, which we want to welcome at LBHF. But when it comes to the licensing objective, prevention of public nuisance, prevention of harm to children, prevention of crime, and so on and so forth, I'm afraid there's a history at the site at 562 Kings Road, whichever is the latest name, let's call it 562 Kings Road, where these licensing objectives are systemically undermined. And I'm terribly sorry to say, but Chelsea Lodge, the lovely gentleman that now runs the restaurant from the licensing perspective, Chase, was also very much part of senior management at that venue. Now, we know at that venue with the submitted papers, the local media, wrote about LBHF area here, unfortunately, as having a problem with that particular venue. So I welcome the restaurant. I think it's great. There's a little bit of a boogie downstairs. No one's against that. But I'm afraid we do need to keep this licensing objective upheld. Licensing, having a license is not a privilege. It's not a right, it's a privilege. And we need to make sure that we don't go back to the past, which 2 years ago, I mean, a licensing committee was having a chat with Chase's business partners about the same site. And, there was a licensing review and they reduced the hours. You do need to have specifically in this, sorry, my cat is now trying to jump on my lap. You do need specifically to have ID because it makes people's behaviour better. You don't get leery guys, trying to, harass women. You don't get people trying to spike drinks. Everyone behaves themselves. They've got a reputation to keep. We have a social media world where it's very easy to look up people. I do actually remember the police complained themselves about the venue because when they asked to look at CCTV, it wasn't forthcoming. So in this sort of, they have a track record of not even being able to provide the CCTV to the police when there are incidents there, of which there have been many, I'm afraid to say. Gives me no pleasure whatsoever to say that. And so obviously having the, sort of ID check is standard across the board. I mean, Maggie's locally in the local area, embargoes. What's so special about the DJ, world-class DJs for late night revelry, as this venue calls itself on its website. You can look it up. I did submit it up on the papers there. But they describe themselves as late night revelry. Revelry, if you look it up, ladies and gentlemen, in the English Oxford Dictionary, means late night intoxication and over drinking. Anyway, I'm sure you're very busy and I don't want to keep you longer than I need to, so I'll keep that short, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reid-Clark. We will now hear from the applicant. Can I ask Marcus Lavelle, acting as the solicitor, or the applicant to speak? And as 15 minutes have been allocated to objectors, you equally have 15 minutes to speak to the application itself. So over to yourselves.
So thank you. I'll try also to take less than the 15 minutes. I appreciate the hour. It's probably important to identify the history of this particular condition. Around 2.5 years ago, there was an incident in which a 17-year-old, not two 16-year-olds, became over-intoxicated in the premises. And it was concerning at the time that the 17-year-old may have gained access without providing ID. In discussions with the police explained to the premises that their concern was that ID had not been checked for this person, allowing them to get entry whilst underage. And they requested that an ID scanner condition was placed on the license. The licensee, being responsible, agreed to this and made an application to vary their own license to place this scanner condition onto the license. So the license is there because the police asked for it, and Chase Hunter, his business partners, agreed and put it on. It was then identified during the course of the investigation that the 17-year-old had not gained access by not providing ID. She had provided what is understood to be the age-old classic of a family member's ID. Apparently an older sister or similar, so she could pass for the picture, and the ID itself, of course, was kosher, as it was simply someone else's. We are now 2.5 years on, and the business itself has moved on. The business has a far more dinner dance feel to it, as has been noted by the local residents. Discussions with the police, who are active in monitoring this and the other licensed premises nearby, have continued. And as a response to the good work that Chase and his other operators in this business have put in moving the nature of the business, Chase identified that it's simply, as the youth may say, it's not a good look. When you're turning up for any amount of food-led, licensable activity, to have to give your ID at the door. And I think any of the members would probably be surprised if they were asked for their ID upon attending a wine bar or a restaurant wine bar. You'd normally expect that if you're going to a nightclub, nightclubs that go on well beyond 1:30 a.m. And so in keeping with the nature of the operation, to try and give as positive an experience to customers as possible and drive the success of this far more food-based activity, Chase discussed this with the police, and the police were in support of specific wording, that wording being developed with the police and submitted for this application. That's why the police haven't objected. So we simply put this forward and request that the members understand that in order to make a good, successful, sustainable business in the current economic climate, it's hard enough. Gaining some flexibility about not having to use the ID scanner for our now very different business would be simply much appreciated by this business. If we have a look at that history of compliance, as was discussed, it was mentioned by the local resident, the enforcement history that you'll see in your own notes. All it contains is that in December of 21, almost 3 years ago, the premises, in supplying CCTV to the police, which it did, wasn't able to comply with providing within 24 hours and therefore was in breach of its condition. And that's it. It did provide CCTV, just didn't do it fast enough. And that's all there is in the enforcement history before you. In terms of any evidence of problems at the premises, I'm sure the members here will be familiar with the guidance. The guidance identifies that when it comes to matters of crime and disorder and maintaining good behaviour by customers of licensed premises, The police, I mean, and I quote, the police remain key enforcers of licensing law, and licensing authorities should look to the police as the main source of advice on crime and disorder matters. Well, the premises looked to the police as the main source of advice, and that's why they put forward this wording. It's why the police aren't here today. And if we look at the concern, the other experts who lie within the authority, you've got the Environmental Health Service, who are experts on noise nuisance, no objection from them. The licensing service themselves, the licensing authority, can make representations. It has not made a representation against this application. The council's own public sector guardians of licensed activity have not objected to this matter. And I would say, in terms of the litany and the great weight of public opinion that we hear is against this application, when the councillors will be aware of this, but it's worth rehearsing. When this application is made, it's both advertised in a local newspaper, but importantly, a notice is placed on the premises. And that notice has an email address, licensing@lbhf.gov.uk. And all someone has to do to object is to write an email to that address. And in your papers, there's a supplementary pack. Because as it stands, you have a single resident that has objected to this matter. 2 ward councillors, who themselves don't experience noise nuisance or issues from this premises, have written in support of that resident, and they claim other residents they hear. The only resident other than the resident who's here today that could be bothered to send a single email to the email address licensing@London Borough, Hammersmith and Fulham, made a representation that you see in your supplementary agenda pack that indicated there should be no relaxation of ID checks and requirements. Again, the council will be familiar with the regular problems of drunkenness that took place in the past. So in the past that the police are not concerned with the premises, that the licensing authority, as a responsible authority, is not concerned with the premises. Your licensing officer, Lorna McKenna, who I understand is here today, responded with an excellent reply. I could not do better myself. It identifies that when it comes to this particular application, it indicates there's an issue with it being a relevant representation, and she gives very good, clear layman's advice as to how it can be made into a relevant representation. They must tie their concerns to the premises. They must also tie their concerns to one of the 4 licensing objectives. Straightforward. That resident, as you'll see above, a resident who'd stated, please, the bottom, I will have no hesitation in mobilising the street and engaging legal advice if there is any prospect of returning to the hellish days we all used to suffer. A very motivated and impassioned plea from the resident. When the resident received Lorna's excellent advice as to how to have a compliant, relevant representation, they couldn't be bothered to reply to her to make it relevant. They simply forwarded it, I anticipate, to Mr. Reid Clark, stating boring. We'll try and represent one of them. I think Mr. Reid Clark then sends it through and asks it to be included in your papers as evidence that the licensing process is complicated and difficult to follow, particularly for pensioners and young adults. Pensioners and young adults can use the email system. They just haven't in this matter. And the one person who didn't find things complicated and difficult to follow. They found it boring and couldn't be bothered to respond to your own officer's very helpful guidance. So it's a simple application that allows a now successful operation to continue operating successfully and enhance its now food-led operation, giving people a good time and a dinner dance-led activity. This is one of the few success stories in leisure and hospitality in the current economic climate. It's something that's supported by the police, where the wording has been agreed with the police, and the police on this crime and disorder condition that they themselves requested in the first place have identified as appropriate as a way of calming down, softening. We don't step away from that. Indeed, it's softening of those conditions, given the nature of the premises as it stands. Given that, given the lack of concern by any of the public sector guardians of licensing, we just commend the application to you, sir, and ask for a chance to continue succeeding in the current economic climate. I have no other submissions, sir, unless there are questions from the panel or any other participant.
Thank you, Mr. Lavelle. We will now move on to the committee question section. So can I ask committee members to ask any question to any party about the application and issues that have been raised at the hearing in relation to the 4 licensing objectives? And as a reminder, the 4 licensing objectives are: 1, the prevention of crime and disorder; 2, public safety; 3, the prevention of public nuisance; and 4, the protection of children from harm. So could I ask, is there any questions that members of the committee wish to raise? I'm going to start with Councillor Florian Chevop-Verdier.
Chair, in fairness, I think Councillor Stanton was quicker to raise his hand.
In that case, over to you, Councillor Stanton.
Thank you very much, Chair and Councillor Chevop-Verdier. And also thank you to all those who have spoken already. You've been very, very helpful. I only actually have probably a couple of questions, Chair, although depending on the answers and what other questions are asked, I may come back later. So I'll start with these for now. The first question is actually to Lorna. I see from the papers that in the last year, the premise have applied for and received 10 temporary event notices. Now, my understanding is that a temporary event notice must be served to the council a minimum of 10 working days prior to an event taking place. Now, those of you who have read the papers or listened to the submissions will recognise that number. I am curious as to at what point, when a temporary event notice is submitted, is it passed to the police for review?
As soon as it's received and processed, it goes to the police and the environmental protection, who are the 2 responsible authorities.
I mean, would that be the same day?
Either the same day or the following day, depending on when it's submitted. But if the question you're getting at are the conditions on the premises licence, are they related to the temporary event notice? No, they're completely separate. There is no conditions on the.
No, that wasn't my question at all.
All right, sorry.
No, I will tell the committee and those who are present what my purpose of asking that question is, and it's simply this: the proposed. Sorry, I have many PDFs. So the proposed condition will say, if I can find it, I've lost it. I'm going to paraphrase it. That conditions 30, 31, and 32 not be in place unless they receive 10 days written notice from the police. Now, I would imagine, having seen the temporary event notices, they do tend to be sort of longer lasting, and I would imagine more rowdy affairs. They might be the sort of events where scanners would be required by the police. Under the current proposed variation, it would not be possible for the police or yourselves to actually comply with the new condition.
Do you want me to answer that, or is it you making?
I'm looking at the responses that I've seen. That's my purpose of asking the question, because actually, if you receive an application perfectly validly 10 days prior to an event taking place, and let's just say, I don't know what the working hours are, but let's say it arrives validly 10 minutes prior to the end of your working day, the police are going to receive it 9 working days prior to the event taking place. And with the best will in the world, I doubt that the very first thing that they do is look at that and respond. So they would not, it's an unenforceable condition, is my point.
I think
one of the things, if I may, one of the things I've always been told that we must not do is produce unenforceable conditions.
I think one thing I would answer, Councillor Stanton, and Adrian can come in on it, is that the conditions on the premises, temporary event notices don't have any conditions attached to them. They're separate to the premises licence, because obviously if a premises does not have a premises licence in place, someone could still apply for a temporary event notice. The police, as a responsible authority, can impose conditions onto the premises, onto the temporary event notice, should they wish, if they feel like it's necessary. So they could impose a condition such as the imposing of the ID scanner on a temporary event notice if they felt it was valid. I don't know if, Adrian, you've got anything else you want to add, or if I've missed anything out there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I may be able to help. So the police, obviously, if they were thinking of making an objection to a temporary event notice, would probably engage with the license holder as well, and may say, we're minded to object to this application or to this temporary event notice, but if you were to have a scanner in place, we would not object, or if you had this particular policy in place, we would not object. So obviously, if they did have concerns about that, they look at every temporary event notice that comes in, and if they thought, actually, we need a scanner here, they would ask them to have some sort of policy or procedure in place. And if they said, no, we're not going to do that, they would just put in their objection anyway. So I think there might be a bit of a fail safe there that might help, but I don't know whether Mr. Lavelle might be able to clarify.
Sir, if I could just attempt to bring all of that together.
Yes.
I would. Your officers are right. I would agree with your officers. However, your words of caution, I would say, are wise. The specific timetable is that there must be a minimum of 10 days given for the temporary event notice. The police have 3 working days within which to object. So why don't we simply expand the duration on the condition to, say, 15 days in an attempt to effectively address all issues?
It would need to be reduced to 7 days rather than expanded, but yes.
Oh, sorry, I've got it the wrong way. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
7 days. Or which, yes, say, effectively will cut the notice to match.
Okay. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, thank you very much. That's terrific. I would say it was just a concern of mine. So that's the first question. The second question really is more general about the premises, and bearing in mind the past issues that there have been. I'm just keen to understand. I've got 2 questions, and they relate to the method, to the manner of the business that there is now. I do understand, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, and I guess this is to Chase really, that the business model has gone more restaurant oriented than what it was. I should say I've never been either to Bohart or Chelsea Lodge, so I can only go on what I've heard, seen, and been told about in the past. I am, however, mildly curious as to and it was actually drawn to our attention by Mr. Reed Clark. The website says, and I'm just going to quote it if you don't mind me, says that the Shebeen, paraphrasing, will make it the ideal location for late night revelry in Chelsea, which does, to my ears, sound similar to the model that was in place previously. So if you could maybe just explain to us how it is different, I would be grateful.
So if I could just speak first to try and draw things together. Obviously, Chase can deal with any specific issues. If I were to put a gloss on it, I might describe it as the contemporary dinner dance. Effectively, it's a restaurant wine bar. People can drink cocktails, eat food, so on and so forth. And then they will indeed, if they're so inclined, stand and dance in the later part of the evening. As someone who represents a large number of late night operators and indeed early morning operators, revelry isn't a word often used amongst nightclubs, and is perhaps slightly used in a kitsch way to indicate persons who've been dining, getting their knees up and having some fun, as opposed to the sort of advertisements we might see for what I would describe as classic nightclubs, the old 151 club on the King's Road. If we look to places such as Cirque du Soir nightclub in the heart of Soho, you won't find any revelry in places such as that. You'll find drink and dance and all kinds of things. akin to nightclub activity. I'm sure Chase can explain exactly how far people go.
Thank you, Chase, if you could, but I'm not really so interested in how far people go. It's really just the change in what you're providing.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, obviously, when we first opened, the downstairs was sort of a stepping into the 90s, 20s sort of prohibition era. And the word revelry, as I understood it, was actually a meaning, I think it had something to do with coming from the French word merrymaking. So to have fun and actually continue a good night, because you've obviously got the dinner upstairs, and you've got a multifaceted business, so they can go downstairs as well and have a merry time, is really what it was based on. But I think the biggest thing, if I can just touch on it, is we actually do now, due to oversubscribing of the dinner, we actually have a dining menu downstairs. We've opened up the whiskey room and put in the dining room, which is quite important. We don't operate it as a whiskey room anymore because it wasn't commercially viable. We actually have a dining room in there for private dining, and we also have dining downstairs with a bar menu in the restaurant for the oversubscribed diners. And that was one of the biggest issues, which is why I touched on this about 6 months ago when I saw this happening. I touched on this with the police and council. I said, I foresee this being an issue because of the ground floor status in the license and the fact that we now have diners downstairs as well. So that is, does that answer your question? Sorry, I think I may have rambled.
That absolutely does answer my question. Yes, thank you very much. Because my next question does actually relate to the current conditions, which say, find the right PDF, that's what they say, which say that the conditions shall not apply to customers entering the ground floor on days when the ground floor operates as a restaurant, where the sale of alcohol shall be permitted as an ancillary purchase to substantial table meal. So presumably the real issue, what you're saying here, is that whilst that worked when people went downstairs for revelry, now they're actually going downstairs for dining instead of revelry, and that's that. And presumably the scanning was taking place. I don't know the layout, but you go from the ground floor downstairs, and that's when you were scanned.
Yeah, no. So the scan is actually at the front door. So you'll have diners that will come in, and then also those that are going downstairs will be scanned. The issue, and it's not with the older clientele, which we have quite a lot of, including some local residents who recently threw a party there. If you don't have your ID, which most of them don't carry, they then have to sign in. Now the problem with signing in is you've got to put your name, your address, your contact details, and we still got to get a picture. And what happened recently and what sparked this months ago was them having to come in and sign in. Now it's all good and well. Yes, you can still come in. You haven't brought your ID. I won't lose a group of 10 people. But are you going to come back? Because you're going to go, should we go to that boho? It was great. Have some revelry. No, I'm not going to stand at the front door in the cold with a line of 20 people because me and my friends are all over the age of whatever it might be, and sign our names, and we can only do 20. So there's a big group of older clientele, which we now attract. They're all going to sign in and they're going to put their addresses, their names. It's just not it just doesn't fit the business model, especially now that we've migrated more to the food and the oversubscription and the private dining downstairs. It doesn't work commercially at all.
Okay, thank you. I think, Chair, that's everything for me. Thank you, everybody. That's really been very helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Stanton. I'm going to move over now to Councillor Chivot-Verdier.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and thank you for the previous series of questions, very helpful as well. I did want, however, to address some of the things that have been said in representations, and this was specifically around the event that happened that has been now discussed and mentioned 2 years ago. So it's been said it concerned one single 17-year-old that would go against what Specialised Press, the caterer, Fulham, the SWCX and the Standard have said, that actually this event involved not one but 4 people in total, of which that 17-year-old person was introduced into the venue using either a falsified or someone else's identity document. But also then in the Specialised Press, it's made clear that people were drinking prior to accessing the venue. So if we look at the event that took place at the venue and the base that I understand for some of the opposition, we're not just looking at one single event, we're looking at multiple points of failure. failure not to admit patrons who might have been inebriated or actually were witnessed to be drinking, failure to spot the discrepancy in the presentation of an identity document, and obviously continuing to serve intoxicated customers. So in my view, this is the starting point. Added to that, the hearing that we had, Councillor Stanton and myself were present, also revealed a number of well, this let's just say bad behaviors from the operators with regards to the residents who highlighted to us, things like taking out trash in a very loud way late at night, which caused us to put on extra conditions. So the starting point actually is quite low. Whilst I appreciate there's been 2 years of seemingly spotless operation, that is a fact. The starting point is low. Now, I also understand this is a national debate currently, and there is no national identity card for the better or for the worst, and that means that not everyone wanting to access the venue will have an identity document to provide. So there is an element of ensuring that we do not increase inequalities. I am just, I think that I'd love to learn more about why is it such a handicap? Why is it so expensive or cumbersome to use this machine that you want to no longer use it? So I don't know if it's you, Marcus, or Chase, but what's so wrong about it?
Well, so just to take each of those issues in turn. Yes, on the time of the incident, yes, there were 4 people who became intoxicated, but only one of them was underage. And there's no suggestion that an ID scanner would have altered anything involving the other 3. And indeed, the person who was underage would still have got in through the ID scanner because they had somebody else's ID that looked like them because they're a family member. But as you say, let's look at the nature of that event. That was an all-you-can-drink brunch, as was incredibly trendy at the time, and has effectively been stamped out by good practice everywhere, and stamped out here. There are no all-you-can-drink brunches. As I say, there's far more nice cocktails and dinner dance. The nature of the premises has changed, and that's what's given the police the comfort that they had to support this. So in terms of looking to see what's changed, it's not just that there has been good behaviour, although there has, it's that offering. The offering doesn't attract very young persons who, in order to maximise their night out or even day out, may drink elsewhere before turning up. They're turning up to actually enjoy the quite pricey cocktails and food that are on offer, sir. If we also then look to the idea of ID, every 18-year-old, probably every 17-year-old, and likely 19 and 20-year-old in the country has, I don't know, 100 forms of ID on them in their wallet at any one time because they're bound to be challenged. Even with Challenge 25 schemes, where you might ask people if they appear to be under the age of 25, if they've got ID proving they're over 18. People in that age may still carry. I don't carry a proof of my age when I'm out, and I don't know whether you do, sir. As you say, we don't have national identity cards that we're mandated to carry as a nation, and as a nation, we probably tend to be quite averse to that idea. And it just makes things hard, especially if, as Chase indicated, an older clientele, and it doesn't have to be much older. Once you've got clientele, the majority of whom are over the age of 25, there's a good chance they're not carrying proof of age on them. And that means they can't get in. So they can either go home or hopefully up to a limit of how many people we have, which I think is 20, they might be signed in. Well, we have many more than 20 people per night wanting to come in. If you turn up classically, simply because of the way the demographics break down, if somebody turns up with, and it's a husband with a wife, even if the husband happens to have a driving license on him, his wife probably has no ID because she's not expecting to hand out ID to identify she's 18 or over when she's in her mid-30s or onwards. We see a lot of that and it causes issues. It just makes it a less desirable night out for people to have to present the ID. And you yourself, sir, you may identify it as odd. It makes your premises stand out as not being quite the same as anybody else can offer a premium night out. And it causes issues with older clientele, and I say anyone over the age of 25 who simply doesn't carry ID, and telling people in their booking, please make sure you bring your ID with you, it just starts to create a bad feel for the night before anybody comes. I mean, I know Chase has already given that particular bit of evidence, but he may have anything to top up there, sir.
No, I think the biggest thing is, I mean, Marcus, at the beginning, you said it was a fantastic success story. I just want to point out that success is extremely, extremely limited this day and age. Hospitality does not make much money at all, and we normally hang on by the skin of our teeth in general, and the new laws aren't going to help much at all. So we're in a position where we have a totally different clientele. We're trying to give them a great experience, and if they're pitching up and they don't have ID and they're having to stand one by one and take away from the security's presence, because they're monitoring other things, greeting people, but they've got to stand and tower over someone while they put in their name, their contact details, their address. And you've got, sometimes there'll be a group of 5, 10, they've come from dinner, they've come to us afterwards, or they're meeting their friends that have just finished dinner and they're coming downstairs for the live music, which carries on till 10 o'clock. And they've got to all stand and sign in, and it just doesn't bode well, and they just won't come back. I wouldn't come back if I have to always, especially in the winter, sign in when I come.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Chair.
Perfect. All right. I just want to check you got a follow-on question from there. I
can come in with a follow-up question if that's all right.
Yes, by all means, please continue.
Thank you, Chair. Well, so thank you for that line of response. I can see the pros and cons, and from a data protection point of view, not great to ask people to share a ton of their personal information when really what we want to know is whether they're 18 plus. Some of the points that I mentioned earlier was some of your relationship with neighbours, particularly around taking trash out or responding to complaints about reveling, which as a Frenchman I can tell you comes from the French word rebel, Old French. So raucous, and we have unfortunately evidence in this pack that some of your neighbours, at least they allege, that these events took place. I realise, Mr. Lavelle, before you said that there's no history of enforcement. The LETs haven't been called in, or noise and nuisance, how they say it. So I wanted to give Mr. Hunter a chance to respond. Could you tell us how you've improved your management of the venue in response to the criticism you had received from neighbours? There's criticism in this pack. What do you have to say to that? And also, how have you improved training of staff and procedures internally to address not serving intoxicated customers? Thank you.
So, before Chase goes through, just to try and bullet point that down to, there's an element of sensitivity about neighbour contact with Mr. Hunter that I'm sure he'll go into. But Mr. Hunter maintains regular contact with a number of his very closest neighbours, as well as regular contact with Mr. Reed Clark. They all have his personal mobile number. They can text him and call him at any time. But all I can say as the representative here is that there is an element of sensitivity, and I think Chase will go as far as he can in that. He may have to explain some things to you. In terms of training, the technical side of that is all staff at the premises have been WAVE trained, victim sensitivity trained. They've also been trained in effectively preservation of evidence in the event that any incidents are alleged, although there haven't been any in the past couple of years. That's why the police are on board. But yeah, so the training is the WAVE and sensitivity training that's taken place. You're probably familiar with that, so unless you need to go into detail on what that involves. Okay, I'll just hand over to Chase to run into his run through his resident relations.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, Councillor Florian, there were a few questions there and I can't remember all of them. Could you give
Sure.
the first one again?
Yeah, sure. So to summarize, what you had heard, what we had heard in the previous hearing is that some of the residents complained about some of your patrons exiting the venue, making noise, trash being taken out. I know that in the pack there's also things about smells, extraction engines being loud. So that was, what have you done to address this? There's still some stuff in that pack. And then the second part was, I understand the previous manager was let go when the incident happened, which did involve serving intoxicated customers. So how have you changed your processes in-house to ensure that that doesn't happen anymore?
Yeah, no, of course. Obviously, first to note, when that incident took place, I actually wasn't around, which I think was made clear to everyone. I was brought on holiday, and I'd like to think when I am around, everything runs very, very well. In terms of the licensing conditions and in terms of the noise, etc., that's all been adhered to. It causes a massive pain for us because we've got to cling wrap bins and pile them up and pests and all sorts of stuff. So we've got extra costs on pest control and bins going on in the morning and extra staff and costs to take them out. So that's something we've taken on the chin and done. In terms of obviously the complaints that we had, which all got brought to light in the last hearing, myself and my brother stood on the street for about 3 months solidly, recording absolutely every single person that came down, every single incident, every single DB reading, and every video that was sent in wasn't our customers. Every single, I think it was about 10% of the 200 and something that we walked down the night were actually of our patrons with no issues. But I do understand that a lot of it was attributed to our site. Obviously, we do responsible retail training as well with everyone, constant contact with Nick Greig-Clark. I get contact with him if he says the extraction from the food is too loud. We've reduced the velocity to 50. When he does message me, I'll go and check myself and see if it is on too loud. Obviously, we do serve food till quite late, and the extraction is just for grills, so it has to take out for safety. But other than that, I think I've answered everything. But I mean, judging by the fact that the last 2 years have been really, really good, I'd like to think that the operation itself has changed, or at least the experience from the residents has changed. I do note there's still exactly the same number of people that walk down that street, and they are still very loud because we stand on that street and our security asks them to be quiet. So that hasn't changed. The only difference is we close at about 1:30, sometimes earlier. And we have a lot of customers still making noise, and not from us, sorry, still walking down when all the other places close. So nothing's changed on that front. It's just we're not being held liable for it anymore after the evidence that we gave.
Thank you. That is really helpful. And I've got 2 final questions, Chair, if I may. The first one is to the licensing team, is to say if you could confirm that there has been no enforcement or investigation by the noise and nuisance team.
Yeah, yes, Councillor, I can confirm that there's been no, well, we haven't been made aware of any complaints to the noise and nuisance team anyway. And they, obviously, as you know, they didn't make a representation to this application either. And from a licensing perspective, we're not aware of any complaints recently in relation to the premises either.
Thank you, Adrian. And my final question is to Nicholas, if you're still on the line. I actually wanted to get your reaction to some of the questions Councillor Stanton and myself have asked and some of the responses.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity just to put in my view, but it does actually represent other residents' views who are busy, and they've asked me to sort of chat to you guys on their behalf, both in Holmead Road and Wandon Road. And that is, this licence change is not about the food element of the business. My understanding, unless I'm incorrect, it's about actually the drinking. So if you are going there after 9 p.m. for dinner, you're not going to get your, ID checks and all this sort of stuff. And the way that the messaging is coming across is that that even people eating food would be ID checks. I just want to clarify that we are talking about the disco late night revelry in Chelsea when actually you're in Hammersmith and Fulham. So it's good to be accurate, I think, helps everyone. With regards to the extractor fan, the problem is it was put up by 562 Kings Road on 2nd floor. And now 2nd floor means it projects into residents' bedrooms because that is the level that all the residents sleep at night. And in the summer, it's a nightmare. In the winter, it's a nightmare because it's got a sort of deep hum to it. So it kind of resonates through windows, even if they're good windows. It's a real problem. And obviously you can imagine when you open up your window and you smell food, and it's unfortunately it's not the restaurant side where you smell something delicious, which I'm no doubt it is. It's really, I'm afraid, awful. So that is a situation there. Chase has made developments when we were in contact. He did reduce velocity. That has massively improved. So Chase is upholding the licensing objective on that part where he can. Unfortunately, when he's not on duty, or sometimes it creeps back up. But I think, Chase, if we're discussing it here, you'll probably get back to hopefully kind of honing in on that a little bit. It's recently been noisy again, but I think Chase's message, hopefully. With regards to the noise, that if you look at my sort of timeline of messaging the licensing number, there's meant to be a licensing mobile as part of the condition. So I have Chase's number for that. If my understanding is that the licensing condition requires the venue to let all the resident associations and residents know the local area what their licensing number is. No one actually knows what it is. So we've got Chase's personal number. So maybe that needs to be looked into. So for the moment, it Chase's number. And, you know, I do mention actually there have been events, times where there's been a breakdown of the licensing objective by patrons. I won't go further because obviously I know everyone's got to get on tonight because we're already at 9 o'clock, aren't we? But yeah, so that gives you something, hopefully.
And to ask you, Nicholas, there's a condition as well on meetings every 4 months. Have these happened?
That doesn't happen whatsoever. And I'd just like to address, if I may, the lawyer's point of view for the applicant. You know, these are tiny little A4 pieces of paper. It was one tiny little A4 piece of paper. People typically, when it's sort of like, you know, advertising a restaurant menu, you see it, you know, it's lit up, it's larger than A4, it's in type that you can see. That this is a tiny piece of paper that's sort of shoved, you know, in a part of the window where I don't think anyone would think anything of it, with a bit of sellotape. And then it says, oh, if anyone's got an objection to the variation of condition 31, 30 and 29, let us know. What does that mean? I mean, I'm afraid it's gobbledygook. So of course it's going to make sense to the licensing lawyer. It's not going to make sense to the public.
Okay, thank you very much. Chair, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chivot-Verdier. I'm going to bring in Marcus. I see that you've got your hand raised, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Stanton.
Sorry, just struggling to both lower my hand and unmute. Just on this, the issue of the extractor and the noise and or smell. The extractor system has been installed ideally in a manner that it shouldn't cause noise nuisance to anybody, and no noise nuisance has been identified by the noise team. We've consulted with them to make sure it doesn't. And it's also designed not to allow odour to create a nuisance. Both of those are actually would be statutory nuisances as well as nuisances under the Licensing Act. So steps have been taken. However, no resident has ever approached us to actually tell us that they hear noise from the extractor or they smell anything from the extractor. They only seem to approach Mr. Reed-Clark, who then tells Mr. Hunter that they have complained to him about the noise and the smell. We've never had anyone complain directly to us. And the reason that's an issue, we are more than happy to deal with it, and we think we have, but there's no way of assessing from anyone who claims to be able to smell something, in which case our odour control needs to be improved, because all of this has a cost and requires work, but everything that's been put into it has been designed not to release odour and not to create noise nuisance. It's even been assessed by the noise team at the council. And so if there are people who say they can still hear a noise and they can smell, we appreciate they contact Mr. Reed-Clark, but we'd rather they either contacted us or contacted the noise team and the pollution control team who will deal with smells. They can attend that person's premises and identify whether you can or cannot hear it coming from us or whether it comes from anybody else along King's Road. It's designed not to, and it's intended not to, and Mr. Hunter works to make sure it doesn't, but we don't have any communication with any of those residents, even though they've been invited to communicate directly. And when Mr. Reed-Clark has noted that there isn't a mobile number, there's only Chase's number. Chase's number is the number. It gives all residents, and Mr. Reed-Clark has it, he can give it to anyone he wants. Other local residents have it, they can give it to anyone they want. Mr. Hunter's personal mobile number is the direct and immediate contact number for anyone who has a concern with the premises. And it goes straight to the owner-operator. So if somebody does smell an odour, And I don't know if Mr. Reed Clark actually smells this, and if he does, it would be good to know from him exactly when he smells, what he's smelling, and we'll identify if something's getting through the odour control system. But as it stands, it's designed not to do that. But if it does do that, we'd rather those residents who experience it contact Chase and or contact the council and have the pollution control team come down. It makes it hard to try and pin it down when we're not actually in direct communication with them. I mean, Mr. Reed Clark can possibly just hand on Chase's number and say, instead of texting me, please text Chase, and he'll try and deal with it immediately. We'll have someone come around to monitor from their premises to identify it's not being caused by our premises. And if it is, bring it down.
Thank you, Marcus. Councillor Stanton, did you want to come in?
Yes, I did actually. Thank you, Chair. And actually, my question has become more relevant, having heard what Mr. Lavelle has just said. It occurs to me that one of the best forums for bringing up items such as smells would be at the meetings that take place every 4 months. And I'm curious, given that the minutes of those meetings are passed to the council, whether Adrian, I guess, or Lorna can confirm as to whether the minutes show that there were any questions regards to noise and smell at those meetings.
Thanks, Councillor. I don't have the minutes of those meetings to hand, so I would need to ask Chase if he has sent those minutes. I haven't got them at the moment that we can have a look at.
Can you confirm as to whether they've been sent to you?
I can have a look at that if you can give me some time. I'll have a look on the system and see if we've received anything and come back to you. But I don't know whether.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah, no
Chase, could you just let me know what methods of communication do you use to advertise the meetings?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I communicate with my residents on a regular basis, the ones that communicate with me via mobile, and I communicate on a regular basis, if not monthly, sometimes bi-weekly, with the president of the Residents Association, Nick. So when he comes to me with concerns, he'll let me know if any residents can hear things or unhappy with things, and that our class is dealing with it.
Sorry, can I stop for 1 second? No, specifically, condition 40 says that the licensee shall arrange a meeting at least once every 4 months, of which local residents shall be notified. I'm just wondering how it is you notify residents of those meetings.
We don't meet because we have texts and phone calls.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stanton. I did have a question for Councillor Alfonso, if he's still on the call. Yes, Councillor, there was some reference made earlier to representations that were directed through yourself. Obviously, as a local representative, I wanted to just gain, if you could summarise, please, the representations that were sent to yourself and also to Councillor Pascoe-Tilbury in relation to this application. Could you just summarise what the specific natures of those requests to make representation on those residents' behalfs were?
So as stated, Chair, in my representation, the concerns were over the ID scanner. And if we were to return to a situation like we were in 2.5 years ago, that events such as those would come to pass again, and all the rest that came with that would occur again. Residents on Holmead Road and around there have a history with this location, fully listen to the fact they've changed, etc., etc. Still does not explain why they want to get rid of the ID scanner.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up to that, could you give an idea as to the approximate number of representations that you, as ward councillor, have received? Obviously, there's been reference made to those that have made direct representation through licensing at lbhf.gov.uk. But I just want to get a sense of what you yourself, or even Adrian or Councillor Pascoe-Tilbury, received directly to yourselves instead.
So I had emails from about 3 or 4. Personally, I can't speak for Councillor Pascoe-Tilbury, but that's how many I had. Which, as you can as a ward councillor yourself, if 3 or 4 emails come through on a singular issue, that's usually quite a big deal.
Thank you, Councillor Alfonso. Could I come back then just on Councillor Stanton's question? Adrian, are you able to clarify this?
Yeah, at the moment, Chair, I can't find a copy of the minutes. I would ask Chase, because obviously there could be several different channels that these minutes could be sent through to us, either via an email to the licensing inbox, or maybe even posted to us. So, I wouldn't like to say for certain that they haven't been sent to us, but at the moment I can't find them. I don't know whether Chase would be able to say otherwise as to whether they've been sent. That's just
Chase, could you please refer to when was the last time you sent over the minutes of your most recent meeting to the council?
I've not. I just touch base with them on a regular basis to check if there's been any issues. And obviously I've got the text logs from my conversations with residents and the president of the Residents Association.
So have you held any in-person meetings yourself?
With some of the residents, and the rest, obviously, as a condition, is around issues, to discuss issues. All the issues are brought to me by Nicholas Reed-Clark on behalf of the other residents. So that's when we deal with them there and then on a more proactive, instead of waiting 4 months. It's normally weekly, bi-weekly, monthly.
Okay, but there has been no standalone meeting itself on this topic?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any members of the committee have any final questions that they wish to ask? Okay, in that case, we are going to move to summing up. Could I first start with Lorna? Do you wish to sum up?
I have nothing to add, but I don't know if Adrian has anything he wants to say to sum up.
Nothing else to add from me. Thank you.
Okay. In that case, could I ask Mr. Reed-Clark, do you wish to sum up? You've up to 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, it would be just that there's accumulation effect with all the different licensed premises in the area. So you've got Chelsea Village, which is a off-license store on Fulham Road, just 100 meters away from the site, 562 Kings Road, that serves alcohol until 1:30 in the morning. You then obviously have Embargo's nightclub until 3:30 in the morning over the road, and obviously Chase has talked about the accumulation effects there. You've obviously got sort of Maggie's, and you've got Under the Bridge, which is a late night license under Chelsea Football Ground. You've obviously, needless to say, got the fantastic Chelsea Football Ground there as well. So there's definitely cultural vibrancy, and if they wish to continue having late night revelry in Chelsea or Fulham at 562 Kings Road, please do, but we need to keep this licensing objectives upheld by keeping these conditions. And I would politely implore the committee in their wisdom to decline this application this time. But let's hope maybe in a year's time, everything's unblemished, and maybe we can look at it again in a different way with some better wording. And I know that the lawyer has spoken about a better offer maybe in 12 months down the line, but at the moment we're just not there yet. And I would just like to politely point out, if I may, there were multiple residents' meetings instigated by the council, not the venue site, in 2021, 2022, which Chase chaired, along with the Director of Public Safety and Regulation, who's head of licensing. And he was absolutely shocked with Adrian actually saying, look at the temperature in the room, Adrian, clearly these residents, 20 residents, very upset. And he was upset about the way that the Department of Licensing day-to-day had been treating the issue, as well as the venue. And still the message didn't get through about upholding the licensing objective, which then led to this child being harmed and the young adults, despite all of our concerns. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Reed-Clark. I'm now going to move over to Councillor Alfonso. You have 6 minutes as you are speaking on behalf of Councillor Pascal Torbaru as well.
Thank you, Chair. As I said during this hearing, as I said during my submission, my issue remains with the condition 30, and my case has been made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Alfonso. In that case, we move over to the applicant, Mr. Lavelle, or the applicant. You have up to 9 minutes to speak.
So just to wrap everything up, this is an application that softens the requirement for ID scanning. That's what it is. It doesn't control the nature of the operation. Changing this scanner condition doesn't change the nature of the operation there at all. It simply removes the need to scan in people's ID. That's it. The reason the police have supported this application is due to the change in the nature of the operation. There is nothing before you that links to changing the nature of the operation. This is merely a request to soften a scanning requirement in support of that. And that's the important thing to think here. This is not an attempt to try and soften a scanning condition and allow the premises to carry on the way it has previously or similar. The nature of the operation has changed because the person that runs it has changed it. That's been considered by the police, and they're supportive of the removal of the requirement to scan in customer ID. That's what we're here to talk about. And as we've seen, there haven't been incidents at this premises. And I would suggest it's a stretch to suggest that incidents at the premises have stopped because it scans in people's ID. That isn't what stops people consuming too much alcohol. It's not what stops them making a bit too much noise in the street. Scanning people's ID is used as a way of ensuring that either ID is checked or that where there's a risk, an identifiable risk of crime or disorder, we might want to have the ID of those people who are in a premises. It is the obligation placed by guidance and by the law onto the licensing authority that all conditions are appropriate. In fact, I think you'll notice, you'll see that in your own pack. Just bear with me. At top of page 6 of the public reports pack. I think that's simply where I'll end this submission. Yes. Your own reports pack identifies that of all things, conditions need to be appropriate, proportionate, and justifiable. We are not looking to change this condition to facilitate a change for the business. The business has changed. The police like the look of that, and they have supported the change in this condition. The reason they see that is what we would submit is that it's not appropriate, proportionate, and justifiable to have this additional requirement on a license for a premises that operates well. And we wouldn't expect to see the need to scan the personal ID of everybody that goes in when they go into what is a food-led restaurant cocktail bar. We wouldn't expect to enter every other pub in the country and have our personal identification scanned and logged. We wouldn't expect it when we go into any restaurant to be scanned and logged. It's on this premises license as a result of an incident 2.5 years ago at the request of the police. By working with the police and changing the nature of the premises, which did not require a change to the premises license, the premises has won the police over to the point that they do not feel there needs to be a requirement to capture the personal data and the identification of every customer that enters. Well, after 9 o'clock, that's the requirement. So that's what we're here to discuss. And that's what we put to you, that this is a well-run operation. And complaints about whether there is or isn't a smell or a noise coming from the filter system, those aren't indications that would bother the police when it comes to whether or not we should be capturing people's data and identifying every single customer and holding that information. We would suggest it's not appropriate, proportionate, or justifiable for an operation like this. We're not applying to change the operation. The operation's changed. It did it by itself. We're asking for an appropriate set of conditions, sir. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Lavelle. We now move on to deliberations, which will take place in a separate meeting room. You are welcome to remain in the meeting room to hear the committee's decision. However, this may take some time. If you do not wish to wait, a summary decision will be published on the council's website tomorrow morning. Can I ask members of the committee to turn off the videos, to mute their microphones, and to join the private Teams meeting to begin deliberations? Okay, I'll just give a moment for people to rejoin as we are ready to give the decision. Fabulous. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for waiting. The committee has considered an application for a variation of the existing premises license for adding an additional condition to the license as follows. Conditions of the premises license that relate to the ID scanners, conditions 30, 31, and 32, shall only take effect when the premises license holder is given 10 days written, including email notice by the Metropolitan Police licensing officer. The premises will continually risk assess the use of ID scanners under the Licensing Act of 2003, in brackets, the applicant. In summary, the committee has decided, after taking into account all the individual circumstances of this case and the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, to reject the additional conditions proposed by the applicant and to amend the existing conditions 30 and 32 to require that any patron customers that the license premises holder believes to be less than 25 years of age have their ID scanned on entry to the premises. A copy of this committee's full decision, including its reasons and the full text of the conditions added to the license, shall be sent to the parties forthwith. If the applicant or any person who has made a relevant representation is unhappy with the decision, they are entitled to appeal to the magistrates' courts within 21 days of the date of notice of, within 21 days from the date of notification of the full decision. That concludes. So I'd like to thank everybody for their participation this evening and wish you all a good evening.
Thank you, members. Thank you, officers. Thank you, residents and councillors.